Hey, what's up, everyone? It's been a while since we've done one of these, I think, but welcome to the Retro Rewind podcast.
Hey, hey. Happy to be back.
Yeah, it seems like we're not doing these as often as we used to, but that's okay because I think we've got quite a bit of gaming news to go over, and we're just going to do like what we normally do and shoot the breeze, and hopefully the couple of people that will probably watch this will enjoy it enough to where they'll come back for the next one whenever that is. But you do have to sort of forgive me a little bit, and probably my co-host as well. I'm full of food from Father's Day, so I hope everybody's having an excellent Father's Day if you are a father, or even if you're a child that you've given your father some very special attention. So I'm just stuffed full of food, so I might not be as enthusiastic as I normally am, but I am excited to be here and doing one of these.
Yeah, me too. What did you have for Father's Day dinner?
Oh, well, we went to Cracker Barrel for one, and then there's another place that's just like an old time buffet. They have just a buffet of country food, so just a bunch of chicken and mac and cheese and stuff. Basically, just stuff full of all that southern starch that gets your stomach full.
That sounds delicious, man. That sounds good. What have you been gaming on?
I've actually been switching back and forth between all three consoles. It's something that I used to do back in the day. I gave myself a daily challenge where I would play, the PS3 one day, the Wii back in the day, and then also the Xbox 360, and I'd play one game on each one day. So I've been switching back and forth, but now I'm starting to sort of hone in a little bit more on the games that I'm playing, more so with the PlayStation VR 2. I recently picked that up, and maybe we'll talk about that here on the podcast and my impressions on it and any impressions that you might have as far as VR units in general. I know it's something we kind of go back and forth with a lot, but it's an interesting topic. Um, but I was playing on the Switch, Tears of the Kingdom.
Okay.
Got about 150. It says 150 or more, so I'm leaning more on the more. Um, but we'll just round down just for the sake of being even and just say about 150 hours of Tears of the Kingdom, and I'm finally finished with it. To the point where I think I'm done. I'm not going to worry about any of the side quests and finding all the Koroks. There's just too many of those to find, and a game usually tells my attention for about 100 to 150 hours anyway, so I think it's about time to move on. On the Xbox, I started playing a game called Planet of Lana. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's a side-scrolling puzzle game, kind of like the old school Prince of Persia, uh, Limbo, or Inside, if you ever played any of those games, or even like Out of This World, back on like the Super Nintendo and stuff. It's just a side-scrolling puzzle game. You saw puzzles move on and all that stuff. It was pretty interesting. And then on the PS5, I've been playing Fall of the Mountain, uh, and also Beat Saber, just because I like playing Beat Saber. But that's been it for me. I understand you haven't been doing a whole lot, but what have you been doing recently with your free time?
I went out and I did buy Tears of the Kingdom. I played maybe 20, 30 minutes just to check it out. I'm already super interested. I know it's blasphemy for me to not have continued, everyone is so excited about that game. And here I am, not even firing it up. But I've been reading a lot, man, and maybe there's some crossover in people that watch because, you know, uh, fantasy books are somewhat in line with gaming and being kind of a nerdy, I guess, or a geeky thing to do. So
Definitely, yeah.
I've been reading a lot of fantasy books, man, and the series I'm reading is called Malazan Book of the Fallen. It's a 10-book series by a guy named Steven Erickson. I'm about 3 books in. And yeah, that's what I've been doing with my free time. I bought Resident Evil 4 remake day one. Haven't launched it. I'm about to buy Diablo 4. Probably won't play that either. But though I'm not playing, I am as excited about the gaming world right now as I've been in a long time, and I think a lot of that has to do with what we saw in the Starfield Direct.
Yeah.
What do you think
Um,
about that, man?
yeah, we can go ahead and just jump right into that conversation. There's been a lot of stuff that I haven't seen about it, but I mean, I have kind of gotten the skinny as far as what's been shown recently. So, as far as the stuff that's been announced, as like the Xbox showcase, quite a few games there that I'm interested in, of course. But I think Starfield, of course, was the big takeaway from it. And Starfield is one of those games that I'm very back and forth with. Um, I'm very cautious about it. Not intentionally because I love Bethesda. You know, I really enjoyed Oblivion back in the day. Dishonored. Never really got into Fallout. But you know, even with some of the more recent series, like they own Doom now and all that, they've just been one of those kind of companies that, like, hey, when I hear Bethesda makes a game, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to enjoy it. But just recently, with the Fallout 76 debacle, with what we've been seeing from Redfield so far, I'm just optimistically cautious, I guess is the good word to use, where I want to enjoy it. It's looking good. It's looking real good. I don't know if you've had a chance to finally see some of the gameplay that
Yeah.
they showed off for it. It's looking really good. But we've heard this stuff before from, I think it's Hello Games or whoever it is that made No Man's Sky back in the day, where they sort of promise this big world experience and there's thousands upon thousands of planets and they're all procedurally generated. You can go to all, and at least when the game first came out, it wasn't all that. So I'm very optimistic because it's Bethesda and they got that Microsoft money behind them. Uh, but at the same time, I want to see it in real time. I want to like read the reviews, watch people play it, and hear good things about it before I jump into it. Just like how Cyberpunk was. You know, Cyberpunk is one of those kind of games where, again, CD Projekt Red with The Witcher, they usually make good games. I don't know where they slipped up with Cyberpunk, but now that the game's gotten through all its patches and gotten through all the issues that it has, now might be the best time for me to jump in and play that. So this might be the kind of game that I will play, but maybe 2024, 2025, depending upon whenever they launch it, it might be one of those kind of games that I have to sit and wait on for them to really like, okay, now we've got a substantial amount of stuff.
Right.
And I know that it's going to be a good playthrough. I know that's a little bit weird because I'm usually the kind of person that I'll jump into a game day one, but usually when I jump into a game day one, it's a game like Zelda, a game that I know they've spent 6 years working on. They've got this down. Any bugs that there are probably going to be very minute bugs. It's not going to be half a game missing kind of stuff. And I know that I'm going to enjoy the game.
Mm-hmm.
Starfield is just one of those kind of games that maybe the scope is too large and I'm a little intimidated by it, but I am interested in it. I just kind of want to wait and see if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I don't blame you, especially with Redfall. You know, I was gonna say, I was thinking while you're talking, seems like they've delayed Starfield enough for it to be polished when it releases. And you're going to have the typical Bethesda bugs that we always get with these big, huge Bethesda games. And I think a lot of the charm of the games come from those bugs in the first. You know, you could get a lot of fun out of those bugs. But I don't blame you because of Redfall, because they delayed that a couple times as well, and they said they were doing that to make sure that it's going to be as good as it can be, and I've heard nothing but negativity surrounding that game. I will say that I'm pleasantly surprised by the graphics of Starfield. I know in the more, you know, a year ago or even a little before that when images were starting to come out, it did not look this good. So it looks like they had an opportunity to not only polish the game and get it running right, but to go through and really up the resolution and up the texture detail. So that tells me that the game's ready. The fact that they were able to add that much, that level of detail, graphical fidelity, tells me, hey, this thing might be running right. The bugs might be very limited, because it's not like they're scrambling and pushing out a game that looks like it was made on the PS3, like, you know, so many of these games are looking right now. So
Right.
I'm excited. I mean, from what I've seen, the gunplay to me is another real big surprise. It looks like it's got a really smooth and responsive gunplay, which is very interesting coming from Bethesda. And we've never had an open world, jam packed with content RPG with good gunplay or really good combat at all. You think back to Skyrim, you think back to Fallout 4, Fallout 3. The gunplay is not the highlight of those games. It's the world and the characters. But now it looks like, hey, you're going to have some really cool weapons. You're going to be able to play with those cool weapons in third person and first person. It looks like both the third person and first person modes were built from the ground up from the beginning. They went into it thinking, hey, we're going to do third and first person. And we're going to make sure they both feel just as good as each other. Because in Bethesda games, you know, like Skyrim, it felt like the third person was just kind of an add-on. It didn't feel like it was designed to be played that way, you know. And I found myself only using it when I wanted to look at my character or when I'm out, you know, running around. But really, when it got down to battle, it was time to switch over to first person. So
Yeah,
I
and,
think they're impressing me, man.
yeah. I mean, they are too, but it almost just this was my worry when they announced two games like that. I kind of felt like, okay, you announced two games together, one of them is not going to get the attention, and I kind of felt like I was right that Redfall was the one that did not get the attention based upon how much they were pushing Starfield. And so I really feel like Starfield's the one that's like, oh, that's where all the money's going, that's where all the development time is going, and Redfall is one of those games. It's like, yeah, here's our uh, obligation for a game this year, I guess, so, you know, whatever. Um, that's just how I feel. I haven't never actually played Redfall. I'm not really interested now hearing some of the stuff I'm hearing about it. Um, but I think I am a little more interested in Starfield. And it's interesting what you said about the way that the camera's working, because I remember hearing something about that from CD Projekt Red when it came to Cyberpunk. The whole idea was they were going to build the game entirely in third person because that's what they're used to with the Witcher games, right? Like that's what they're used to. They're used to having that mode. And then like somebody in some of the higher ups just like, no, we're going to do it in first person. And it like completely just made stuff just crash and not work properly, and they had to go back and rebuild it. And that's what part of the issue was with it. So I really am hoping that that's what they're doing, because what I have seen of the action, you're right, has been very impressive. Like the parts where they jump up and they're shooting down or whatever, and then they're able to just like, it just feels like it's a very smooth transition over into some kind of a gunfight and then back out from the gunfight.
Right. It almost feels like just as good as any other FPS. You wouldn't know this is a large scale. If you were to just show me a clip of the combat, I wouldn't know, okay, this is a giant Bethesda RPG that's going to be full of quests and characters and exploration. I would think, okay, this is an FPS. This is an 8-hour story-based FPS campaign with good gunplay. That's how I'm feeling. And if it lives up to the trailers we're getting, then I don't know. I was feeling real down on it because, like everyone else, Bethesda has screwed the pooch for their last few releases, and it just hasn't felt good. You know, I mean, it's been over a decade since they've released a really good game. I thought Fallout 4 was okay, but I don't think it was on the level of Fallout 3, New Vegas, or Skyrim. So I've been a little soured on them since Skyrim, which is what, 12 years ago.
Yeah, if you even consider the fact that really those games even came out technically during like the 360 era, we basically had an entire console generation go by where they didn't come out with a solid release.
Right, exactly. And I think this might be it. This is the redemption arc for Bethesda, man. I think this is make or break time. I think they need a certified massive hit on their hands. And I think it's going to be good for Xbox as a whole, especially all the flack they've been taking about Redfall and just their lack of exclusives. This arguably, if it's on the level of a Skyrim, could be considered the best exclusive game to come out this generation. Because what has been more successful, more widely played, and more widely acclaimed than Skyrim? You know, outside of maybe a Zelda game, a Breath of the Wild, or but with these new gen consoles, this might be that game where we look back and say this is the game that defined this generation.
Right. And, and that could easily be it. So now we're finally starting to see some of that Bethesda money, and if this transaction does continue to go through, maybe we'll see some of that Activision, some of that money they've been throwing around, finally come into play. So do we think that this is, I mean, probably not 2023 because I don't know if there's anything else coming out, but maybe 2024, um, within the next couple of years, do we think the Xbox is basically coming back? They're making a comeback, getting some exclusives out there, and finally starting to bring out that workhorse of a console that they said they were going to have.
Yeah, I think so. I do think that Xbox. Um, I think Redfall was a wake up call. You know, and I think it's been the narrative has been that Xbox doesn't have the exclusives and that Xbox isn't as good as Sony, and they've known that. But I think they were banking on Redfall a little bit. You know, they were kind of pushing it as, look, here's one of our AAA exclusives. It's made by the guys that made Dishonored and Prey, and it's going to be amazing, and then it sucked. So I think it's a bit of a wake-up call for Xbox. Like, okay, we really got to get out of our own way a little bit. It felt very much like, I think I heard some reports that Redfall was kind of, there were some initiatives passed on from Xbox leadership and stuff like that to kind of, you know, Arcane kind of wanted a more immersive sim single player experience similar to Dishonored and Prey, and Xbox kind of pushed for the more co-op, shared world, open world kind of thing. So I think maybe Xbox knows now, let's get out of our developers' way. Let's trust them. We made these investments. Let's trust them. This is all speculation. This is just what I hope, because I'm an Xbox guy at heart. You know, I've always been a Microsoft Xbox guy, so I hope they just get out of their own way and let the developers create passion projects instead of trying to fit in with the times or fit in with whatever they think the industry is headed to or what's been successful, and just let the developers create passion projects.
Yeah. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what works. I mean, look, one of the reasons why I love Nintendo is because they are the kind of company, every time somebody talks about, oh, Nintendo's going to buy this, they say, no, we partner. Like, look, we don't, Platinum Games likes to make games for us, but we partner with them. You know, like they usually partner with Capcom when they let Capcom make a Zelda, for an example. They said, what does Capcom want to do, and how can we make it work for them? They didn't sit and say, okay, Capcom, if you make it, the dungeons have to be like this, it has to be this, that. They basically just said, you know, what would Capcom do? You know, I remember saying something about it one day where it's like, okay, look, even though they own Retro Studios, right? They own Retro Studios, they could just snap their fingers and go, hey, make this. They went to Retro Studios and like, what do you want to make? And they're just like, well, you know, we still have the game engine, and we still have a lot of ideas for Donkey Kong. How about we make a sequel? And they made Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, which is considered to be one of the best Donkey Kong games out there.
Yeah.
It's a really hard game, but you know it's considered one of the best. Um, and that's just a little bit of what I'm talking about. When it kind of seems like, okay, yeah, I kind of get what you want, like you might want, but that's what you got these other games for. Like you want a co-op shooter, you got Halo for that. If you get Activision, you're going to have Call of Duty for that. You know, but if you want, you know, a massive 1,000-hour RPG game, go to Bethesda and say, look, we want a massive 1,000-hour RPG. What you got?
Make it happen and do it in your way, and we're just here to support you and provide you with the money that you need to make it the best game you can make it.
Mm-hmm.
Exclusives are the only reason Sony has the reputation it has and continues to have the reputation it has, is the exclusives. If you were to take all the Sony exclusives, put them on Xbox, and take all the Xbox's exclusives and put them on Sony, then it's a completely different story. Xbox is the one that is being heralded as the best console, and everyone's fighting, in the console wars to talk about how much better Xbox is. So
Yeah,
that's what
and
they need. They need exclusives. I do believe that's what matters most.
I've always said that exclusives sell consoles, and one of the prime examples that always seems to come up, even from people on the PC side, is, hey, I can play these games on PC, but if I need to play a Mario game, I have to buy a Nintendo console.
Right.
So that's like, okay, great. I want to play Spider-Man 2 now. I'm very interested in it. I have to be able on my PlayStation 5. So if I didn't own one, I have to go and buy one now.
Yes.
Like it's the kind of thing, and I think that that's what makes Sony work, is because they take these companies. I was trying to think for a moment who did it. Santa Monica, maybe if I remember correctly. Imagine they just went to Santa Monica and they say, "Hey, look, that God of War game was really good, and we understand you're working on the sequel. Can you make it an online co-op where like Atreus can jump in and out, and like just imagine if they got in the way of what Santa Monica was trying to do with Ragnarok. You wouldn't have had as nearly as good of a game as what you got from it."
Right. Yeah. Look at what people are able to produce when it's clear that the publisher's not in the way, like Elden Ring. You could tell this is From Software's best attempt at making an open world Dark Souls, and nobody got in their way. It's just what they wanted to do, and boom, game of the year. You know. So,
Exactly.
yep.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I really do think that that's the best thing. I mean, even when it comes to those games, like I gave an example of Nintendo, Bayonetta 3 was a very good game. They just basically said, we believe in Bayonetta. We want you to make another one, and here's some money to do it. And I mean, that's just how I feel it is with Nintendo. Like, every time it seems like they work with somebody, they're not like, because trust me, Nintendo has the money. They could probably throw the money out there and be like, yeah, sure, we'll buy Activision, we'll get all the Call of Duty games. But they don't want that. They want people to partner with them, so that way they feel like they're not hindering in the process, because they don't want to be like, okay, we own you and you're going to make this game, right? They don't want them to feel that pressure. And so I'm hoping that that's what Xbox does. I'm hoping that some of this money that they are putting into it, they're not going to get a little bit lax about it. Like, yeah, we got all these studios. Somebody's working on something. We don't have to necessarily feel like, hey, we really need this kind of game out. We really need this kind of game out. We can delegate this to all these different studios, and we can get something more regularly out and build up those Game Pass subscriptions. And I'm sure this is what they're really going to be pushing for, is the online subscriptions.
Right. So what else from the Summer Games Fest and from all these presentations has got you excited?
I know it just came out, but Synapse, I think was recently shown. That's a PSVR 2 game. I'm going to pull up the list again. Summer Games Fest. Because I'm sure I can remember all of them by name. But I probably can't remember all of them right now off the top of my head. But there was one that was shown off. I mean, obviously, Alan Wake 2, obviously. Just because you and I were big fans of Remedy. Remedy just makes awesome games.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I really hope that they continue with this connected universe that they seem to be trying to build up. I really hope that that's what they do. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing Jesse from Control kind of show up somewhere, and maybe even make, I don't even remember the guy's name now. I know the actor. Every time I see the actor, I'm like, that's the guy from Quantum Break. But I'm hoping that they even kind of bring maybe him back in somehow and be like, yeah, everybody is connected. But as far as what's been shown on, Spider-Man 2 is interesting. The new Prince of Persia is definitely kind of interesting. I'm just a big kind of Prince of Persia fan, so that's something. Sonic Superstars is one that you told me about.
Ooh, I'm really excited about that, actually, to show my daughters, to bring the new generation into the Sonic,
See, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. My kids have always been like that. Like, they played Sonic Origins, and was it Origins? I don't think it was Origins. because Origins is the one where they sort of remade 1 and 2. I think there was one
Mm.
that came. It wasn't front. So we had that 3D one, which I think was Frontier, and then we had a 2D one before that. And I thought it was Sonic Origins, but they played that. I think they spent more time playing that than they did Sonic Frontier. So I really think that they enjoy the 2D ones more because they really seem like they liked Sonic Generations back in the day. My son, I have a video of him playing Sonic 4 Episode 1, I think. Um, and it's like one of the very first games he played when he was like 5. Like they just really like the 2D Sonics, I think. Probably because they're simpler. I mean, you're just basically going right and running really fast. Um, versus like Frontiers, which is more puzzle based and like, oh, what's over here? Solve this puzzle and all stuff like that. So that's more for like me because my puzzle brain.
Yeah.
But I just like Sonic games altogether. It doesn't matter if they're bad ones, which there have been some bad ones, or if they're really good ones. I just enjoy playing. Alan Wake 2. Um, let's see here. I'm just going through this list here, so just kind of bear with me while I sort of. Oh, apparently they have a Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis closed beta. Let's see here. Twisted Metal. I told you that's going to be coming on Peacock, apparently, and that's got Samoa Joe in it as. What's his name? I don't remember. The one that was the clown face. I can't remember his name.
Sweet Tooth.
Sweet Tooth, yeah. So, interested in that. I actually kind of want to try Exo Primal. Lies of P looked pretty good. I really thought that Lies of P was a pretty good game. Let's see here.
That's interesting to me. I'm actually interested in that because that's a very Bloodborne, Dark Souls game. My understanding is it's basically a love letter to Bloodborne. Maybe I'm wrong, but it does look. I'm throwing some gameplay up right now on the screen. It looks very, very Bloodborne. What is it about that game that has you interested? Is it the aesthetic, the time period, and just the way it looks?
Yeah, I think so. I think because like that was one of the things that kind of got me when it came to the last case of Benjamin Fox or Benedict Fox. Was just that whole time period and like, yeah, they kind of threw some Lovecraftian lore in there and all that stuff, but it was just kind of interesting aesthetic that it all had. That's what lures me in actually a lot more because like there was that one game, I don't remember what the heck it was. It was a Metroidvania, but it had like this weird art style that's kind of throwing me off a little bit. And I'll probably try it just to really kind of see, hey, yeah, I do like Metroidvanias a lot, so I'm really going to like this, but I kind of have to get past that art style.
Right. Yeah, the art style could go a long way. You know, it's kind of why I haven't gotten too much into anime in my life, is the art style just doesn't really click with me. The Japanese animation style. Funnily enough, I actually really like manga and I like reading it, so I like the art style on page, but I haven't always been a big fan of the animation, which I'm sure some people who are major anime fans would say that's blasphemy and that I'm stupid and don't know what I'm talking about. But that's one of those things, you know, it just doesn't speak to my soul. So I get what you're saying. I think animation and art style could go a long, long way into pulling you in.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing because what is the very first thing that we see from the game?
Yep. And you're right, dude. I'm looking at this Lies of P trailer right now. It looks incredible. And this is coming out in September.
But you don't know how it plays.
Right.
They can say one thing, but you can probably play it and it's like, hey, the X button, like this could be something weird like you have to attack with the LB and the RB buttons, and it's just this weird control scheme, and it's like no one likes this. Hey, but it looks really good.
I'll tell you what, Liza P just entered my list of one of the most anticipated games. This trailer is pretty impressive. There's a lengthy gameplay trailer that Sony put out a couple days ago, actually. And
Yeah, so I mean,
yeah,
so that's on there, um, and just yeah, there was something else that I wish I had remembered. You and I were talking about it at work, and I was watching stuff. I think I was watching the Sony showcase, and I was saying, "Yeah, this one looks good. This one looks good." I don't remember what it was, but there was quite a few that's coming out. Plus, always the problem with this because I see a game and it's like, "Hey, it looks good," but I'm probably not going to remember it in a year or two when they actually say this game's going to be coming out. So, um, that's a question I guess we'll have to come back to later. But just from what I can initially remember, st-
ah, you know what looks really interesting? Clockwork Revolution.
see, I heard about that. I'm going to bring that up now.
Yeah, let me see if I could get some. I don't know if they put in any. Did my keyboard go out here? Did I lose battery on my keyboard midstream? Let's see. Clockwork Revolution.
So I'm going to see. I'm going to watch the gameplay trailer for it.
Yeah, it's got a very BioShock Infinite vibe to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of my favorite games. I know amongst BioShock fans, it's very divisive. Not a lot of some people love it to death. Some people don't like it and prefer Rapture and the first BioShock.
Yeah,
Which I do.
and
I do prefer the first, but I loved Infinite as well.
yeah. I mean, even just watching the trailer, you can definitely get that Bioshock Infinite feel.
Yep.
And see, it's already kind of got me interested just because it's got those steampunk robots. Because there's just something about that, throwing in robots or throwing in the idea of like mechs or, kind of a steampunk world
Yeah.
or just something fan- fantastical like that. Like, yeah, I like the high fantasy stuff, uh, but sometimes I also like the futuristic stuff too. And so to have something that's kind of a blend in the middle of this kind of old school, like futuristic stuff, like old tech, I guess, but also something that is kind of in the future.
There's nothing
Uh,
better. There's not. That is my preferred aesthetic for video games, and that's why I loved BioShock so much, because that was what BioShock was, very 1950s, you know. But it's also, hey, under the ocean here, we had this guy doing all these genetic and technological experiments to create these high tech and genetically enhanced people and all that. I love that. I love like a 1950s, 1940s vibe mixed with tech or sci-fi or something like that. I mean, that's just perfect. Similar. I mean, that's why I like Fallout so much too. Fallout's got that very like things were stuck in the 50s kind of vibe, and now we've moved on, and love it.
even Dishonored kind of felt like that because one of the first things that interested me about Dishonored was like they have these things that are on long legs and they're just kind of walking around like that's interesting. And then like you hold the mask and it's got like uh, just clockwork stuff in it, and
Yeah.
it's just a very interesting game. That was probably one of my favorite games to play on the 360.
Oh yeah,
I
that's
really
one
need,
of my
I really
top
need to
games
play.
of all time, probably top 10, and I haven't played the second one because
I haven't played the second one.
similar to BioShock, I never played BioShock 2 because I don't know. It's like when I hold a game in such high regard, I just want that feeling to live with me forever. And I feel like if I now I could replay the game multiple times and still love it, but if I go on to that second one and it disappoints me, part of my brain almost sours on the original. So it's like I like to just avoid sequels sometimes when the first one is so good.
Yeah, yeah. I get it. I haven't played the second one either. And yet, still similarly, it's weird because it's like I haven't played two, but yet I'm still kind of like, hey, when are we going to get a Dishonored 3? Like, I'm kind of still wanting them to come out with more in the series, but I haven't played any more in the series. So it's weird.
Weird, right? Because I if they announced Dishonored 3 tomorrow, I would run around screaming with my hands up, like, oh my god, Dishonored 3. Um, but would I play it? I don't know. I don't know. I just want it. I just love the immersive sim genre. I think that's something we need to get more of. Prey, Dishonored, Bioshock, System Shock, stuff like that, where you're in the first person, you're free to approach all the different missions and quests as you see fit. There's multiple ways you could sneak, you could dialogue your way in, you could trick guards, you could go around this way, you could do full on combat, you could.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love it so much.
And that's actually what I kind of love about it. So it kind of just the way that you were talking about it just kind of made me realize it's one of my other loves, and that's tabletop role playing games. I don't talk about it a lot here on this channel, but I love doing stuff like that. And just because you get that same kind of approach of, hey, the the idea is, I'm sure that you want to just run straight into this fight and just take them out, but maybe we can go around them, or maybe we can like persuade them. You have different
Yeah.
approaches of getting out of a situation other than just let us pull out our blades and settle this in blood.
Right.
Um,
Yes,
and
and you're
so,
constantly able to make like perception checks in your immersive sim game, right? You enter an area and you look around. You say, "Okay, can I go up there? Can I go through this little crate down here? This grate in the street here, and crawl through to the other side." That's what Dishonored did so well. I loved it. You could just all the
yeah,
ways you could traverse the thing. It does feel very tabletop in the decision making.
yeah. I remember one time I didn't even realize I could have done this. I just did it inadvertently. And I'm like, yeah, that works. Apparently I jumped into the body of a rat and I snuck past somebody because I didn't realize there was like a grate in sewer. And it's like, yeah, you can just jump into this rat and go past them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll take that. That wasn't the way I was thinking, but I'll take it. And, just those happy accidents like that. Really need to have more games like that. I think that's one reason why I like open world games like what Tears of the Kingdom presents, and of course Skyrim and all them. Um, they sort of present this path of, hey, you can go anywhere you want and do stuff any way you want to do it within a certain confine, of course. But I really feel like that should be Bethesda's next thing. I don't know if Starfield's going to do that, but I'm hoping that whatever they do next is that kind of game where you can just sort of. I just wanted to revisit that world. I just like that world, I guess, of Dishonored.
Yeah, and the fact that you could play the entire game without killing a single enemy
Mm-hmm.
is incredible to me. The depth of level design that they had to go to make that a possibility and a reality where yeah, you could kill every single character in the game. You could just go absolutely nuts, and then it has a real world impact with the rats being more aggressive and numerous. Or you
And
could
the
just
ending makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, and or you could just be passive and not kill a single character in the entire game. You could just choke them out, or incapacitate them somehow. It's just incredible. I
Yeah.
might be due for a playthrough of Dishonored actually.
Yeah, and just thinking about that got me thinking about another game that I miss and another game that I hope they bring back, and that's Deus Ex. Um,
Yes.
I really like Deus Ex because it did the exact same thing. I remember when I was playing, what was it, Mankind Divided? No, it's Human
Human
Revolution.
Revolution was the first kind of revival of that, and then Mankind Divided was the second.
Yeah. Um, Human Revolution, where I literally could not have beaten a single boss. I mean, they later updated it to where you could get around it. Uh, when it first came out, you had to, of course, kill the bosses, but just the fact that you had so many different ways of, like, I could set up a turret here to shoot somebody. I can go around them while they're distracted, and I can just keep on with the objective or whatever, and or just not hurt anybody at all. Is basically that exact same kind of world and experience, and I think it's just perfect.
Yeah, agreed. Not to mention, just a little gushing about Deus Ex, the 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 philosophical and human questions that it begs you to ask yourself about body modification and things that are going to actually not be so sci-fi. When Mankind Divided came out, when did it come out? 2011, right? We weren't there. There wasn't as much discourse about artificial intelligence, 3D printed organs, body modifications, the ability to have an artificial heart, artificial lungs, artificial eyes, implants in your brain that make you smarter. With Neuralink that Elon Musk is working on, stuff like that. So now we're starting to see glimpses of the kind of themes that Deus Ex was working with, and I just think it was brilliant. I think the storytelling and the world building of Deus Ex is just brilliant, and it feels very philosophical at times. Like, what would you do? Are you the kind of person that would modify yourself? Are you a post-human or a transhuman? Transhumanism? Do you believe in that, or does your religion and your kind of moral code tell you that you would no longer be human and no longer favored by your religion or whatever? It's those kinds of things made Deus Ex amazing. And that's the end of
Mm-hmm.
my TED Talk.
Thank you for coming. Okay. Um, so I think this is going to be kind of a good segue into what do we want to see. Like, we already have stuff coming out that we know about, um, and we kind of have sort of mentioned a few already. But outside of what we've already mentioned, what would you want to see? Like, what would be that must-buy game of 2024 if they announced it?
Well, it's already been announced, um, but it wasn't talked about during Summer Games Fest or any of the showcases, and I was actually extremely disappointed. And that's Quantic Dream's Star Wars Eclipse. We've talked I think we've talked about Quantic Dream basically every podcast we've had.
Yeah, they're an excellent developer.
To me, that's it. And I hope that's a 2024 release, and maybe it's an October 2024 release, and we hear about it in the next Summer Game Fest next year, and then they have more to show. But to me, that's the one that I really want to play, because them with the power of these consoles. I mean, it's arguable that Detroit Become Human looks better than any game ever. I mean, you can argue with the facial animations and the motion capture and just the depth of the environments and stuff like that. So I just really want to see what they could do with a sci-fi universe and with the Star Wars license. I mean, I couldn't be more excited for that. So that's something that I was really disappointed wasn't shown.
Yeah, and I can definitely echo that. Not so I'm not so much of a Star Wars fan anymore, so I'm not really looking forward to that game. But the stuff that Quantic Dream does do has always blown me away. I mean, even going back to one of the first, as far as I know, it's their first game. I don't know any other game they released before then. Even going back to their first game that I played from them was Omnicron: The Nomad Soul. It had David Bowie in it, and they used facial stuff to, like, animate him when he would sing, and he'd voice act, and his wife was in it, and it was just this amazing genre-breaking game, because at any moment it switched to a side thing, and now you're, like, doing Street Fighter-like stuff, and it's a first-person shooter, and it's a third-person sci-fi adventure, and it's just It's all kinds of stuff built into one. But just how good that looked back then on the Dreamcast and on what like was essentially the PlayStation One, even though it never came out for PlayStation One, still looked good. And then you look at what they did with Heavy Rain on the PS3, and like we just talked about with Detroit Become Human on PS4. To see what they could do with this current gen technology, I think is going to be really good. So I'm definitely going to keep an eye out for it. I'm not going to just turn down watching it. Like, hey, it's Quantic Dream. Yeah, I'm going to watch it. But I don't know if I'm going to play it. Star Wars kind of burnt out on that franchise. But
I can agree in so many ways about Star Wars. Um, I don't know when you got burnt out or if you've ever been in on it at all, but this most recent trilogy just kind of really turned me off to the entire franchise. I I was a big Star Wars fan, major Star Wars fan going into it. I had a tear in my eye when Force Awakens started, and I was sitting there in the theater like, "Oh my God, Star Wars is back." I cried. I literally shed tears. And then I proceeded to watch the movie, and then I watched the Last Jedi, which was the next one, and I haven't even watched The Rise of Skywalker. That'll tell you how disgusted I was with The Last Jedi. So, similar to you, I would prefer a Quantic Dream game that was their own IP and kind of them, maybe even a Detroit Become Human 2. But I'll take it. They're like Remedy for me. Whatever they make, I'm going to play. And I'll probably play it real early.
yeah, I know, and who knows? I might try it and maybe I'll get back into it. But yeah, ever since not this recent trilogy, I didn't really care for it after Disney bought it. But that last trilogy just didn't really sit well with me. And then everything kind of after that, where it's like, yeah, the games they brutalized. What is it, Battlefront or Battlefield One, whatever it was. They had a Star Wars shooter,
Oh, yeah.
and just the way that the franchise was sort of mishandled in
Right.
recent years, and then of course the recent movies just haven't been helping. So um, it might be the kind of thing that maybe somebody else down the road will get it and they'll revive it, and they'll be like, "Yeah, I love Star Wars again," all that stuff. But as of right now, it's just not my thing.
Yeah. I don't blame you.
But I would definitely be checking it out. I'll definitely be watching like renderings of it, commercials of it. Um,
How about you? What
there's
what were you hoping to see?
Well, see, Nintendo hasn't entered the fray yet. They haven't announced a direct. As far as I know, there's been no announcement of a direct yet. So really, we're going to have to wait and see what they announce. But there's one game that they talked about was coming to the Nintendo Switch that hasn't come to the Nintendo Switch yet. That they keep saying is being worked on, and I'm hoping that it's a really powerhouse game to really sort of usher out the console and Metroid Prime 4. It hasn't been shown off yet, and I'm just a big Metroid fan. I really like Dread. I really like what they did with Metroid Prime 3 and 1. Not so much a fan of Metroid Prime 2, but that's just I enjoyed it. It just was different from the others. Um, but I really hope that now that we've gotten the success of Dread, that Metroid Prime 4 can come out and really just sort of showcase like what we talked about Star Wars. Metroid is back. It's a really good series, powerful series. The gunplay is going to be good. The puzzles are going to be really good. The boss fights are going to be epic. And yeah, now whether or not they will, I don't know. We don't have uh, anything announced yet. But I just think it's very weird, and this is going to sort of transition, I think, into another topic. It's really weird that we don't have anything that we know of past Pikmin 4. So, like, what's coming out the second half of the year? We know that really stupid Everybody 1-2 Switch is coming out at the end of this month. We have zero gameplay on it, so we don't even know what it's like. And the fact that we have zero gameplay on it from a company that likes to show us gameplay before they announce a game probably tells you everything you need to know about that game. Um, and we have Pikmin. Those are the only games I know of that are still coming out. Um, outside of some third party stuff, we're talking about like Nintendo in house. Metroid Prime 4 is the only one that I know of.
And
So
that's been in development for 6, 7 years.
yeah, it's
Where is it?
because I mean when they said that it was going to be developed, I just want to give sort of a time frame as to how this is. Um, and I'm sure all the Metroid fans out there, they already know the frustration, but just to sort of give you an idea in case you're not aware, anybody that's not aware that may be listening, this game was announced as being developed for the Nintendo Switch after they announced that they were coming out with Samus Returns on the 3DS. Okay? And that was at the beginning of the Switch's life cycle, maybe the first year. And after that, they had announced these other games are coming out. Oh, Bayonetta 3 is coming out. Bayonetta 3 did come out. They even shadow surprised and said, hey, yeah, eventually we're going to come out with Metroid Dread. That game came out. Every single game they said is going to come out for the Switch has come out.
I mean, there's been 2 Zeldas, right?
Yeah.
Basically, in that time, there's been 2 full-blown open world 100-hour Zeldas.
And 3, really, if you want to count the Hyrule Warriors spinoff of Age of Calamity.
And they remastered Skyward Sword.
Yeah. So there have been a slew of games that at the time, I didn't even think we were going to get on this console. And they've come out. But we still have nothing from Metroid Prime 4.
Who developed... So is Metroid Prime 4 developed by who? Nintendo Nintendo... that's an in-house Nintendo development team? Or is that like a different studio that they publish?
It was originally going through Bandai Namco.
Okay.
And then they showed it off, and I guess they said, we don't like the way this is looking. We're going to hand this back over to Retro. And it's been in Retro's hands now for probably the last 4 or 5 years. And no idea about, like, I think we got a little bit of a tease as far as like a little bit of a blue background of like the ship and showing Samus and like, okay, yeah, that's really cool, but it was like an image of the actual game, a teaser trailer, even if it's not the actual gameplay, just like a 30-second teaser of like Ridley and her visor or something, just to like make my mouth water just a bit. Just nothing.
Do you think they're gonna scrap it?
I still hold, and this is one of two things. And I still think, because Nintendo's the kind of company that when they say it's going to come out, it's going to come out. Like, they said Star Fox was coming out for the Wii U, and it did. Even though they probably could have held off on it. And even though they could have made Super Mario Odyssey a Wii U game, they decided to move it over to the next system. I think that because they said it's coming for Switch, I think it's still going to be Switch, but I still am holding on to the idea of Metroid Prime 4 is a launch title for their next-gen system. Whether that's a Switch 2, whether that's Switch Pro, whether that's Snip Snap, whatever they decide to call it. Whatever they decide to call it, because they change the name for the consoles all the time. I think they should stick with the Switch name somehow. Just because then people recognize this is a successor to it. But that didn't work out for Wii U because of the way they named it. They didn't realize it's a successor to Wii, so they have to be careful on how they name it. But still, I think this is going to be a show game, where it's going to be like, hey, remember how good Twilight Princess looked on the Wii? Yeah, go buy a Wii. Look how good it looked. I think this is going to be one of those kind of games. It's like, hey, look how good this game looks. Don't you really want to buy? Because that's what enticed people to buy a Switch, was seeing how good Breath of the Wild looked on it. So they really wanted to go up and buy a Nintendo Switch.
Yep.
So I think it's going to be one of those. And even though Breath of the Wild also came out for the Wii U, everybody saw it as a Switch game. I think it's going to be one of those kind of things where it's a next-gen Switch, and maybe also there's like, hey, here's another version of it. Maybe it's a lower res version. that's on the actual Switch. So it's going to be like a cross-gen game, but I think it's still going to be sort of seen and pushed more as a next-gen Switch. Just because at this point in time, we have stuff that Nintendo's basically saying we're launching a console. Like the signs are all there. One that I already mentioned, right? No games coming out. Think past July. I think the second half is pretty dry. Outside of Pikmin 4, unless they showcase something at like Summer Games Fest or something that says something differently, I think that we're in the last few months of this console coming out.
So
Or being out.
when do you think the new Nintendo console is? This holiday?
There's different thoughts on it, but I do think it's this holiday for a few reasons. One, Furukawa, the current president of Nintendo, has stated that he will not be counting hardware sales for any future systems until April. And so that has got people thinking, oh, well, that means April 2024, obviously. But he says he's not counting those sales. He's not going to consider the sales. So if they sell all kinds of units in December, that's not going to count because it's not going to count in the fiscal year until April. So it sounds to me like he's sort of hinting at sooner than April. So, which gives us still about a year, a little less than a year. But I think it makes a ton of sense because April is when the fiscal year starts over. It's what they did with the Switch that came out basically right at the tail end of their fiscal year. And they came out with a killer game with Breath of the Wild. It makes sense. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe holiday
2023 or 2024?
2023, either holiday, it's either announced by like September or it's announced in like December, comes out maybe January, February. I'm still thinking before April, but I'm saying by April.
That's huge.
Huge.
Bold.
That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm hoping for. Just because look, I love my Switch, but I feel like it's time for me.
And I think that would make sense for Metroid Prime 4 to have been, maybe they changed course and said, okay, we're going to actually make this for our next gen console. And this is going to be what we launch with. You know, because you don't hear about Nintendo games having tumultuous development cycles. I don't really hear like, oh, Nintendo's firing the team and like restarting this game, and you know, you said that happened with Metroid, but maybe the idea was we're gonna pivot and make this the launch title for our next console. Because why else would it take so long?
Yeah, and they keep hiring people, so obviously they're working on it, but maybe somewhere along the way they got done with the game where they're like, no, we got this new technology, build it on this in secret. Almost like what they were doing with the Wii U. Towards the end of the Wii U's life cycle, I kept thinking, man, when's this Zelda gonna come? You know, when's this original Wii U Zelda gonna come? When's this original Mario gonna come? And Miyamoto stated something that he doesn't see Mario coming until the next system. That was sort of the first hints that, yeah, we sort of abandoned the Wii U, we moved on to the next console. And of course, Mario Odyssey came out as a Switch-only game. So I wouldn't be surprised about that, but I just think that it's more the hush-hushness of it, because every single other game was just like, yeah, we got a little symbol showing a 3, and Bayonetta 3 is coming. And it took like 2 or 3 years before we heard something on the game, but then we got a trailer on it, you know? And it's just like, but this game has gone way back, almost to the beginning of the console's life cycle. We have heard nothing new from it other than a video years ago of just, I don't know if it wasn't Furukawa. I forgot who it was, but they basically had somebody up there, and they were just basically saying, we're sorry, we have decided to restart development of Metroid. Please wait a little bit longer. And then they did their bow, and that was it. It's like, that was about 5-6 years ago, probably. Nothing since then. There hasn't been anything. It's like, hey, Yeah, remember that Metroid game? It's still coming. Just please wait a little bit longer. Like what we got with Zelda. There was all kinds of delays with Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. What's happening with it? But then they showed like a little teaser trailer and say, "Hey, it is in development." And then a couple years later, like it's still in development. You know, we're just waiting a little bit longer, and they would show us a little bit more. You see what I'm saying? Like or they would say, "Yeah, it's still in development, but now we're going to delay it." You would still hear something. The
Right.
fact that we haven't heard anything either. And look, this is Retro. Retro Studios made Metroid Prime because up until then it was a side-scrolling Metroidvania game, obviously because it's in the name. But they were the ones that are just like make it first person. We're going to show you how to do it. They made that series. So now to be like, what, Retro can't make it? What are we saying?
Yeah.
Where is this game at?
Very interesting. I'm excited, man. If you think that we're talking that we're like 6 months away from a new Nintendo console, that's very exciting. And I'm gonna start putting $20 away every week.
I mean, we'll see because you just never know. Nintendo's going to Nintendo. They could do it tomorrow. They can just say, "Here it is," and it's like it's gonna be in your local retailers next week, and everybody's like, the internet's exploding trying to get pre-orders and all that stuff. You never know. They're gonna do what they're gonna do because
It makes you wonder, when was the original Nintendo Switch announced? What month?
I think it was December.
It says it was unveiled October 20th, 2016 and released in March 2017. So, yeah, I mean, maybe we're looking at a very similar window here. We're a couple months away from a reveal, and then maybe early next year we get the console.
Because I mean, it makes sense. They came out with it in March because their fiscal year starts over in April. So it was literally the console that pushed them into that 2017 um, year, and they had just killer games announced. So like, hey, here's Arms, here's Splatoon 2, here's a new Mario, here's a new Zelda. It's like here's a new Xenoblade game. Why haven't you bought this thing yet? Um, and maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe they've got so many games announced. They're just like, we're just gonna hold off, not announce them. And then here's a new console in October, and here's the new 3D Mario. Here's the new Metroid. Here's this awesome new Xenoblade, completely open world, do whatever you want game. Blah blah blah. Why haven't you bought the system yet? Like,
Yeah, if they launch with a Mario and a Metroid as launch titles, it's gonna be very successful. Or a new Donkey Kong. Give me a new Donkey Kong, man. Give me a new 3D or side-scrolling Donkey Kong. Either way, I'm in.
I actually want this Donkey Kong game that they've been talking about. There's been sort of talks that they're doing the Breath of the Wild or the Odyssey treatment, whatever you want to call it. Because they did it with Kirby, they've done it with every franchise so far. But they wanted to take Donkey Kong into an open world experience to where you can just sort of do these objectives any way you want to do it, in any order you want to do it. And it sounds like it's going to be a way more fun game.
Oh, that would be incredible with challenging platforming in different world biomes, and you know they could really have a major hit on their hands, and I would definitely be a buyer for that.
Definitely. So, yeah. But that's all that I have as far as Metroid Prime 4 goes. Um, Otherwise, the world of gaming seems interesting.
Yep.
It always is. It's probably the reason why it's my biggest hobby and my biggest love. Is just because it constantly keeps throwing surprise after surprise out there. Hey, that's a game. Interesting. I didn't even think I was going to like that. Um,
There really is no other industry where as many impressive releases are happening as frequently as they are in gaming. Movies, you go through You got your blockbusters every year, but it's only a couple good movies coming out.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just not a movie aficionado. Maybe there's movie fans out there that are like, "What are you talking about? There's so many good movies." But it just feels like gaming. There's always like every month. I could pull up the release schedule and say, "Oh, I really want to play this."
Well, I think it's just the interactivity of it. Because just like you get more into books because you build the world in your imagination and you sort of invest in the characters as you're reading along with them, I feel that same way with video games. Here's this blank slate of a character. I get to level up their skills how I want. I get to play the game how I want. And I get to invest into this world, especially if it's a game like Infamous, where it can be either good or bad, and your choices affect that world. I get to affect the world the way that I want to do it.
Yep.
Whereas with movies, yeah, they're fun, but it's like, hey, it's going to be resolved. This is going to be resolved in like an hour and a half, maybe 2.5 hours, depending on how long the movie is. And I'm just watching it unfold. I'm not involved with it.
And everyone's experience is the same with that movie. Now, they may have different tastes and different, experiences that make them understand certain scenes in a different way or think of, relate to certain characters differently. But at the end of the day, it's the same words you're hearing and the same visuals you're seeing. With video games, a lot of the times, it's not. You and I could play the Tears of the Kingdom and have completely and totally different experiences. And I imagine there's a lot of gamers out there that, unlike you, don't maybe complete a game or try to 100% a game. Maybe they just play through the main story and some side activities. So there's a guy out there that played through the main story and some side activities of Tears of the Kingdom, and then there's another guy out there that played different side activities, and they get to go and talk about the different things they saw, and that the other person will never see, and it's really exciting in that way, where a movie or a book really can't do that. You can't read the same book and have a section of the book that you experience and other people don't, just because you put more effort into the book. That's what's cool about games.
That plus with books and movies, it's just the experience is completely different. See, like if I wanted to, because there were some people that they did, they speed ran Tears of the Kingdom, and I think they finished it in like an hour and a half. They can get a completely different experience than somebody who maybe drops 500 hours into the game. But if you have somebody that a book just came out and they said, yeah, I went through the whole thing in 90 minutes, they probably skipped some chapters, they probably read really fast or whatever and missed some points that other people would get from reading it. But with a video game, it still makes sense because, hey, you got the same ending, you got to see these bosses or whatever, or you maybe didn't fight the bosses in the temple. You went straight to the end and had to fight them all in one big go. That's
Right.
something completely different. Or maybe you went to the first dungeon and then went straight to the end and had to fight the rest or whatever. But the book from beginning to end is the exact same. And if you hear somebody say, "Yeah, I've dropped 500 hours on a book," oh, how many times have you read it? Like it's that
Yeah, and it's the
that
same experience every time, really.
yeah, the characters do the same thing, and they say the same things, and the outcome's the same regardless of what you do.
Right. Very interesting,
But
man. So, do you think with the announcement of Apple's Vision Pro headset that
how did I know that was going to come up?
do you think that that means VR gaming is kind of God, what's the word I'm looking for? Validated, and it's going to solidify it as a thing. Now, I know Apple's headset is more of a spatial computing, they're calling it, and it's more about productivity and work and stuff like that. But does it validate the entire industry and mean that VR gaming is going to grow?
I think so. And I have a couple of examples, if you'll bear with me.
Sure.
You have to sort of think back, and you can think way back because you and I were older like that. We remember the times where you had flip phones,
Yeah.
and no one thought of the idea of, oh, a phone that is completely a screen. That's just crazy. Who would do that? Now everybody knows what an iPhone is, and every phone is like this.
Yep.
Why would anybody want to put stuff on their wrist? That's just so. Oh crap, Apple Watch. Now everybody like wants to have one, and Samsung got in on it, and everybody else got it. I think Google's even now got a Google Watch or something. Like everybody's getting in on that. So it's just one of those kind of things. The iPad really made tablets become a big thing.
The
When Apple,
iPod. Yeah.
yeah, when the iPod changed how music was listened to, it seems like when Apple gets in on it, that it's something that people are like, hey, maybe this is the next big thing. So now I'm waiting for Samsung goggles to come out and just like, hey, you really like those Apple goggles? Here's all good. Whatever they're going to do. Um, I think it validifies AR more. VR is it's a separate category. In some ways, they're the same because I know that with the PSVR 2 and some VR headsets, you have that output to be able to see what the cameras see, and so you can then technically do AR in your room and all that. But because they're focusing more on spatial stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if the like it can close or whatever, and then you can have a VR experience, or you do AR games where you're playing, like you're looking at your table and the Minecraft stuff just pops out and you're just going through it and playing it right there on the table, or just something like that.
Yeah. Interesting, man. And I really do hope that VR gaming kind of evolves in the way that set top box gaming has, and that every generation it just gets better and better. Are you seeing that with the PSVR 2, that it's a significant, does it feel like the same kind of leap from a PS4 to a PS5, from PSVR 1 to PSVR 2?
Yeah, I do actually. It was actually kind of weird. I didn't notice it at first until I actually went back and played the PSVR again, the original PSVR, and it's like, oh yeah, I can see a gap right here on the bottom. I don't see fully, like I know it's 110 degrees versus like 90 degrees or whatever, but I don't see as much,
Yeah.
you know, and so it felt
More
different.
immersive.
It felt more immersive, and the only thing that I wish, and I know it's because it's a more expensive headset and it uses the PS5 for processing, but I kind of wish it was cordless just so I could play it anywhere. And that's kind of what I start to feel like. It's like if we can have to where you can wear two Apple Watches and that detects your wrists or something, and you can just wear like the goggles and you can just go out in the real world and just like interactive stuff like that can be how stuff goes. It almost reminds me of Ready Player One, like when you were in that headset. So,
Yeah.
um, I mean, I hope it does, but at the end of the day, it's like 3D was for like the movies and the 3DS and stuff like that. It might hurt some people's eyes. It might not be for everybody. So I don't think it's going to be. And even with my glasses, um, they're scratched up, and I don't realize how scratched up they are until I'm looking at stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's not as clear as I think it should be because of my glasses. I'll probably just get new glasses. But it is a significant leap. The controllers are way better. I like the fact that you can make the screen as big or as small as you want for cinematic mode. Um, the games can be in 120 hertz if you want, so it can actually process games at a higher resolution than what my TV can. So
Yeah.
that almost makes you want to play like old PS5 games again. Like this game could do 120. How much different is it now? Like go back and just try it
Okay,
again.
so you could play, say, you could go back and play Spider-Man Remastered, Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered, on the PSVR 2, and it puts like a big screen TV in your view, or how does that work?
See, I wish I could show you. Like I can put it on the headset, I can look at it, but you won't see it. But yeah, it's basically like if I put this, screen up this close to me, it's like it almost looks like you have in-home theater, which is nice. And I like the cinematic mode. And if that's too big for you because maybe you don't like having to look back and forth like this while you're watching a movie scene, you can make the screen smaller. Um, but it's more of a slider than what it was with PSVR 1, where it just said you want a small, medium, or large. It's a slider, so you can choose how big or small you want it. But, you know, I do enjoy it. I don't get nearly as motion sick anymore from VR as what I used to.
Does it
And
still happen, or has it been eliminated completely?
it still happens, but it happens for a different reason. Only reason why I get motion sick is because I'm invested in the world. Like when I'm playing Call of the Mountain and I'm like trying to like reach up and grab stuff, my body's like still thinking, "Hey, you are actually holding onto a cliff." So I'm trying to like lean back,
Right.
and so it's like, "Oh, I've lost my balance," and it's like, "Oh, crap." But it's for a different reason. It's not just because I'm seeing all this graininess, and it's just like, oh, there's all this movement, all this graininess, and um, so yeah, I like the PSVR 2. I do recommend it, but I understand it's outside of people's price range, just like some VR is out of people's. But I'm a tech guy, I'm a sucker for phones. Even though I have the Pulse 3D headsets, I'm probably gonna buy those new earbuds that Sony announced because I want to try the lossless sound with Bluetooth, and I'm weird.
No, no, I don't blame you, man. That stuff's exciting. That's what keeps us going. That's what keeps us living.
My wife doesn't understand it. She's like, "You got a PSVR." I was like, "What's different?
It's better, damn it.
It's better. It's like having a PS5 versus a PS4, which you should understand because I have a PS5 and a PS." But um, she just doesn't understand it because it's like when I'm playing the same game on the PS4 and we're playing the same PS5, I'm like, "Aren't you playing the same game?" Yeah, but this is running smoother. It's loading faster. It's like it looks better.
The controller's got haptic feedback and adaptive triggers.
Mm-hmm. Um, so there, that's just me. I like that tech stuff. I get excited about it. I'm not going to drop $3,000 to try Apple's new headset. I'm sorry, Apple. Um, I
That's
don't have
very
that time.
pricey. It's very
I
pricey.
I don't have that kind of dough. I'll just put on my VR headset and pretend that I have it. And
That's a big ask, man. I was seeing some statistics that like 57% of the country could don't have $1,000 in their bank. So you're talking over 160 million people don't have $1,000, let alone enough to go buy a $3,500 VR headset. Who's it for?
right, and that actually leads into a very interesting question, and perhaps an interesting topic, if you want to go into it, is how much does this hinder moving forward with this kind of technology? Because just like, and granted, when VR first came out, it was very pricey, and it's been getting less and less and less. And even so, with like, iPhones are still expensive though, but when you're talking about, hey, do you want to buy three iPhones or do you want to buy one of these goggles? Which one makes more sense?
Right.
How much of a hindrance do you think that kind of price tag is going to put on this technology? Because it might be a few generations. Like this might be like maybe the goggles 3 or 4 before it's a reasonable price where people are like, yeah, I think I'll buy one.
Yeah, they're gonna do the Apple Vision Pro SE, in 2 years, and then it's gonna be like $1,000 one. I think what's gonna happen is it's gonna hinder Apple sales for sure, and they're probably already bracing themselves for like, okay, let's be the industry leader in this. Let's be first. Let's be the first for spatial computing. We get to tag it. I think they're gonna get decent sales, but like you said, I don't think the everyday Joe is gonna get it. I think what it does though is it benefits Quest 3. I think Meta Quest 3 now is in a prime position to get a lot of interest. And it's going to be at a low price point. It's going to be wireless. And people are going to say, you know what? I'm really interested in this. What else is on the market? Oh, this brand new Quest 3 that I could game on and watch movies on, and maybe has OLED screens now and, 120 hertz and does a lot of the same things for a much lower price point. So I think Quest 3 is about to explode.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was actually on purpose. Where Apple's just like, we've got the Apple infrastructure. If you really want to like read your messages in the middle of your bedroom, um, but maybe they kind of did deliberately. Where it's like now you can kind of step forward and Sony can go. So, what about that price for the PSVR 2?
True, Sony, yes, Sony as well. MetaQuest 3 and the PSVR 2, I think, are benefiting a lot from this announcement. I'd actually be super curious to see sales and see if there was like an uptick in PSVR 2 sales after the announcement from Apple, where people are like, you know what, I got to get something similar at least.
I think there was. I think I remember because I think right around the time when I picked up my unit, I think that I actually saw an article that came through my newsfeed that said that sales of PSVR 2 are actually going up. Um, and that could be because of Apple's announcements, but people were just like, yeah, that looks interesting. Yeah, I kind of like these VR units, not for that cost. Oh, what's this one? Like,
Yeah,
um,
600 bucks looks a hell of a lot cheaper when it's compared to 3,500. I mean, when PSVR 2 came out, I said, "Oh my god, is it six, it's 599, right? Or 549? How much is it?"
yeah, 549.99, 550. I spent about 580 or whatever with taxes, so close enough to 600 if you want
Yeah,
to round up.
yeah. When it
And
first
then if
came
you
out, I was thinking,
and
"Holy crap." But now I'm like, "Hey, that's not too bad." I'm actually thinking about picking one up.
and then if you go off and you buy the $50 charge thing for it, that's basically 600. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's and then of course you get a game for it, unless of course you were like me and mine came with Call of the Mountain. You buy a game for it, that's probably another 50, $60. But you still get the point of it still comes out a heck of a lot less.
Yeah.
Which is what I use as justification. Because it's like, yeah, it's pricey, but it's not the $1,200 Meta Quest Ultra thing that I'm seeing.
Right.
So it was half the cost. And now with this announcement, it's like, yeah, that's ludicrous. Um, but I am interested in technology. If they have it at Best Buy or anything, I'm going to put it on and try it and go, yeah, pretty cool. But I think that it's going to be almost like the Apple Watch. Like it's probably going to be expensive. No one really gets into it at first. But then as time goes on, maybe they start to fade the other stuff away, focus more on doing cool stuff with the Vision. As long as you have it paired with your iPhone or whatever, they drop the price on it, and then it might pick up a little bit more. I mean,
Yeah,
we'll see.
I think once the form factor is a little sleeker as well. It's still a bit bulky. Now, it's the best looking one there is, and there's no doubt about it. It's the slimmest, best looking headset there is. But I still think it's a little too bulky to see out in public.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about the PSVR 2. When I put it on, it's like, man, the visor thing around it fits so much better in my head. It encapsulates my whole face so I don't see a gap out of it compared to the PSVR 1. So I'm curious as how well this like fits up against the eyes and stuff. Um, but again, I don't really feel like dropping that much money.
Yeah.
It's it that and that's the key thing. That's the key thing is price at the end of the day. So I think that in some ways it's hindering, but it's also helping. I think it's going to definitely help the other headsets, um, whether they have a grainy screen effect or not. But I think it's also going to kind of hinder them because it's just like, well, if this is what the future is, then we can't move forward with it. But I do think it's going to help other companies push forward because then, hey, they got sort of a base to work on. And it's
Right.
like, well, we can do AR gaming with this and have it be $600. And it's like, well, that's not so bad. And then it becomes kind of thing where, you know, what is it, the ebb and flow of economics where, you have, supply and demand. More people want demand of this. And so the price goes down because more people want this kind of AR, VR technology. And so it goes down and all that economic stuff that I learned years ago. But who knows? I'm interested in it though.
Me too.
But I think that that's all that I have on my end. So if you want to wrap it up, or if you have any last minute thoughts, I'm okay with it. Um, and I think that we've actually kind of gone over a little bit as far as what we want to see, what we're currently playing, and
Yeah. I enjoyed it,
I
man. I'm so happy to be back doing this. It's so fun to me.
It is, it's the kind of thing that I looked at my phone here just now, and it's like I didn't even realize it's been like 2 hours, like it or an hour and a half, however long it's been. It didn't really feel like it was that long.
No, it doesn't. It just flies by. Good stuff. Thank you for having me on.
Definitely. I mean, I don't know if I could do this for anybody else, really. Even if I thought about doing it myself, it would just be weird. But um, I have thought about making some changes to the channel, though. Probably bringing up more tabletop stuff, board
Dude.
game, board game reviews. I don't really know. I'm just sort of going off of whatever my head thinks of, and it's like you should do a video on that. Okay, I guess we'll do it. And then
Do it.
sometimes I talk myself out of doing certain videos just because like that doesn't really fit the form factor. But at the end of the day, I'm just a guy on the internet trying to do his best.
Yeah, we're just having fun.
That's all it's
It's about the passion and the fun, man.
about the passion and the fun. So, um, you probably haven't done any new content recently, but do you want to tell anybody where they can find you, or do you just not want to worry about
Deuce does wrestling. I might
it?
start live streaming on Twitch, man. Now that I've got the early schedule, I might start live streaming on Twitch during the shows, and then followed by a review on YouTube at Deuce Does Wrestling. So stay tuned.
Deuce does wrestling. I do like that idea. If you're a wrestling fan, as I am, um, and maybe you can do other sports too down the road. But I like that idea. Even if it's something where you just talk about rumors that you're hearing or whatever, you can just do that. That's something
Yeah.
that I like to do. That's what I like to do when I get on YouTube, as I see these little like Solo Sokoa is doing this, and it's just a little rumor thing or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, cool. We'll see if that actually plays out or whatever. And it's just like a little rumor video. But definitely be sure to check out my buddies. Deuce
Thank you.
does wrestling. And of course, as always, no pressure from me because I'm just a middle-aged man on the internet who's just doing this for fun. But if you do enjoy this stuff, feel free to leave a like. Feel free to subscribe because I try to do content every other week. Sometimes I just don't get in the right headspace, and just life encompasses me and pulls me away. But I try to at least record one weekly video. Um, and yeah, if you have thoughts about this, as far as I know, comments are still going to be open. You can feel free to leave comments, but like I said, no pressure from either of us. We just hope you had a good time watching. And I don't know whenever we're going to do the next one, but feel free to also join us for that next one too.
Yes, sir. All right, everybody.
All right, peace out.